Our top story this hour, it's been 48 hours since the Boksburg tanker explosion, and both the City of Ekurhuleni and residents will have to start tallying the cost of recovery. Our business reporter Ntokozo Khumalo currently at OR Tambo Memorial Hospital for us to help us unpack just what these costs are and how the families and the city are planning to move forward. And Ntokozo, of course, as we take stock of the damage caused, it's going to be quite some time before we can fully quantify really how much we've lost here.
Good morning indeed. And the first 48 hours, obviously, of a tragedy like this, always being, the most important couple of hours. And as you said, I am out at Tambo Memorial Hospital in Boksburg, Ekurhuleni. Now, the hospital is one of the oldest in Gauteng, dating back to 1905, meaning that it's more than 110 years old. So obviously already aging infrastructure at the hospital. Now, earlier this morning, I did speak to some occupational therapists of record who have worked at the burns unit and emergency unit at Tambo Memorial. And they say to me that the hospital has been under pressure for years, with both staff facing that pressure, with the hospital being understaffed, and patients not getting the quality of care that they should be getting at the hospital. Now, obviously, Dr. Joe Butler, who is the Minister of Health, did have a media briefing last night, and he said that the department remains optimistic that the structure of the hospital will manage to continue to serve that Boksburg community and surrounding areas. But, reports from as back as 2017 showing that keeping the hospital alive would require more than 800 million rand. Now, of course, this is before considering, a tragedy such as the explosion that we saw over the weekend. Now, Dr. Mpatla did say that although the windows and the roofing was affected, he said that he is confident or optimistic that the structure will stand. Now, this is despite him admitting in that same briefing that, the emergency unit was badly affected. The infrastructure team will, of course, in the course of this week, be doing those assessments to kind of unpack from the hospital point of view and some of the damages that we see from the homes around us, just how much, though, that cost will be. And we do expect that report to be out later on this week. Let's hear what he had to say on that.
Going forward, our infrastructure team will be working on maintenance work, looking at where some of the buildings, as you would see, even this block where we are, the administrative block, some of them is just the broken windows. So some maintenance work will carry on immediately. And then, of course, the major capital work, which will come in once the engineers have done their work and have given the report. But at the same time, also medical equipment. You would have seen, as we were doing the walkabout, that one of the affected areas is the X-ray division in the emergency and accident and emergency unit. Again, from the layman's naked eye assessment, the equipment themselves look like, probably not badly affected. But until the experts have examined them, seen that the electrical works, everything, the actual functioning of the equipment is still okay, we will not be able to say so.
All right, so those are what's most important, of course, is how families affected will also handle the costs that come with the damage to property, but not only that, also the loss of life and the trauma that all of this has caused.
Now, obviously, I think what's important for us to keep in mind is that although Boksburg is a sort of industrial town because of the major routes that it connects to, including, being between the N12 and N17, for residents here, close to 20% of the residents are over the age of 60. So an aging population and, the younger ones obviously being unemployed or, struggling to make ends meet. So for that aging population, they've mostly paid off their houses, or close to paying off their houses. So considerations such as household insurance is now considerations that they have to make. But also when it comes to the cost of some of those victims that we've seen over the weekend, some have been moved to other hospitals in other parts of the province, like Borough Hospital. So the cost of commuting to go and check in on those family members is a consideration. But also those burn victims, already what we know is that occupational therapy specifically for burn victims is very expensive when you go the private route. And when you go the public hospital route, the likelihood of you getting that quality of care that you need is also then limited. So those are some of the costs that families will need to now think about after these first 48 hours. Now again, Dr. Joe Mpahla did say that as they are working through the report in this week, they will identify some of the costs that will be there, not just for the city, but for the residents here that may need additional support. So he did say he will be then talking to stakeholders on just what that support may look like. Let's take a look at what he has to say there.
What we can assure you is that as that report is coming, in anticipation, we are working together looking at the possible sources of funding from national grants, from the provincial infrastructure funds, in anticipation of that report which will be coming, so that when the final report comes of what are the things which needs to be attended to, that work is not going to be waiting.
All right, it's a developing story that we'll continue watching for you. Dr. Joe Mpahla, the Health Minister, wrapping up that live report from Ntokozo Khumalo, who's in Boksburg for us. Ntokozo, thanks very much indeed.